Welcome to the Sendcast. My name is Dale Pickles. I'm the host of the Sendcast and I'm also the Managing Director of B Squared. If you are a new listener, then welcome to the Sendcast. The aim of this podcast is really simple. We want to reach as many people as possible and help everyone, including me, learn more about special educational needs and disability. In this episode, we explored how play and schemas can help adults better understand behaviour, communication and wellbeing in neurodivergent children, particularly those with complex needs or PMLD. And I was joined by Ange Anderson, a former specialist school head, SEND advisor and author specialising in therapeutic, sensory and play-based approaches for neurodivergent children and young people. The Sendcast is powered by B Squared. Our assessment software Connecting Steps helps settings to show progress for a wide range of pupils. And within Connecting Steps, one of our frameworks is Early Steps. And as the name suggests, it's for early years and it's based on that development matters. But we have made a number of changes to support settings to show progress for children with SEND in early years, including splitting that massive birth to 3 years into smaller levels so we can show those small steps of progress for pupils working at these developmental levels. In the show notes, as always, you'll find a link to the B Squared website and a link to book a meeting with me so I can take you through early steps or any other frameworks we do. But for now, let's get on with that podcast. My guest this week is Ange Anderson, a former specialist school head, SEND advisor, and author specialising in therapeutic, sensory and play-based approaches for neurodivergent children and young people. Ange is particularly passionate about purposeful play, sensory profiling, schemas, therapeutic interventions, and the right of children with complex needs and PMLD to lifelong learning. She is known for translating theory into realistic, meaningful strategies that busy staff, teams and families can turn into everyday practice. Welcome to the show, Ange.
Hi, lovely to be here.
You are very welcome. Now, you specialise in play, and I feel from my observations of schools that play is something that is moved away from probably quicker than it should. And it is seen as something you do with younger children in early years, but as they get older, it stops.
Yes, I totally agree with you.
And I think, and again, we're talking about complex needs, but I think in a typical primary school, that as that majority of that class are maybe able to learn in a different way, that's when that play stops.
Yes. And I think that's a lot to do with the curriculum and the pressure on teachers to meet assessment needs based on the curriculum. I mean, there are obviously, and we do it far more in special schools than in mainstream schools, there are ways to teach children through play.
Yes.
DIR floor time is a prime example of that. And I have to say, a huge success is from using a play-based approach to learning.
And as you said, it's the curriculum and often the assessment that need, or the feeling that you need to have evidence of what's been achieved. And often that is that writing.
That's true. And when we set up DIR floor time classes in my last school, we set them up because we had children with severe autism and challenging behaviour that were disrupting other classes. I had studied DIR floor time and I sent my staff on the courses that are available in Great Britain. And so we piloted this one classroom, and it's far harder to do assessment through that play approach because the children are leading. And so you have to do assessments, and we had B Squared at that school, and it lends itself to that, but you have to get into the way of letting the children lead and teaching according to that, and it worked, but it's more work for the teacher initially while they get used to that way of teaching. It was so successful that other teachers within the school wanted to take on that approach in their classroom.
So interesting. Joe Graves talks about, I use this a lot, that learning to listen. Yeah. When you have that written work, you know exactly what you're going to expect. When you're doing that play-based thing, it's learning how to listen. It's how to recognize those skills. That's the bit. It's not, it's what you said. It's probably not, as you said, it's more time consuming at first as you're learning how to listen, as you're learning to take in that approach.
Yes. Because people are traditionally in teaching, teachers are so used to, this sounds awful really, teaching towards an assessment.
Yep.
But they are used to that. And with this, it has to be a freer approach, because the children have to decide on what they're going to do. And it actually ties in so well with play schemas, and how they help children to learn.
So
sorry, go on.
I'm about to say, you mentioned DIR floor time. Now, I don't know what that is. So for me and for anyone else listening, what is it?
Well, DIR floor time is basically that, a play approach to learning. And so a child would be interested in a specific thing, and you allow them to tackle that area that they're interested in to learn. So, for instance, one of our boys, and I talk about that in my latest book, the Neurodiversity Toolkit, where one of the boys was fascinated by trains and so on. And because we have this new classroom, he built a train set all around the exterior of the classroom. And he came up with all these plans of trains across the world, made maps. And I mean, there's a picture in the book showing you that. And he even wrote to the then Prime Minister to say that we needed the train track in Flint to come from the station up to the school. He felt that was important. And so he wrote a letter to the Prime Minister. This would not have happened if you're teaching 9 to 5, maths followed by literacy, followed by whatever, if that opportunity would not have arisen.
It goes back to a really old a thematic approach, going what my mum always used to talk about when in the early days of teaching. She obviously had a plan for the day. She wasn't completely winging it, but something on the way to school that morning would just change the entire day. It might be that autumns have arrived and on that day the colours were amazing, or something had happened, and she would just basically use that for that entire day. And it is about capturing those children's interests. Yeah. And you'd go out, you look at the leaves, and then you kind of let them explore.
Yes. And I mean, it is kind of like that, but that is still more teacher directed.
Yeah.
With this, it's the children directive. I mean, one of the boys had been in a class and was very challenging. He'd be climbing all over the furniture, all over the children, to reach a window that was quite high up. Now, they found that challenging and a behavioural issue. When he was in the DIR floor time class, which is where we moved to, he was fascinated, they found, by butterflies. And what he had probably been doing in that classroom, he may have seen one in the window and was trying to get there to see it. What we allowed him to do was become, trying to think of that name now, that sort of butterfly collector. But anyway, nearly came. We allowed him to go searching for mini bees and butterflies and to follow the the life cycle. You know what? It's beautiful, because that probably been what he had wanted to study, you know?
But I suppose, and again, you can make assumptions. He's going for that window, he's trying to get out, or he's trying to do this, he's trying to do that.
Yeah, but he could have gone through the door.
And as you said, you worked out, you took that time to be curious, to work out, why is he going up there? What is it? And you let him lead within all the safe boundaries and all that sort of stuff. But you didn't decide and then do something. You kind of went, almost, let's see where this goes.
Yeah, and that's the secret of play schemas, really. Because, when a child, I've had lots of parents come to me about a particular play schema, and that's probably the first on my list of play schemas. I use the mnemonic protect. So instead of protected, it's protected, because I didn't have the play schema didn't allow for anything else. The easiest one I could make. And so the first one is positioning. And a lot of children are fascinated and line up things all of the time. Then parents come to me and say, oh, my child must be autistic because they're constantly lining up. Well, be honest, schemas aren't a sign of neurodivergent. And neurodivergence is a massive umbrella. If you're neurodivergent, you're not just autistic. It's a massive umbrella covering so many different conditions, dyslexia, dyspraxia, all kinds, really. And so to be positioning and using that and enjoying that particular play schema does not mean that you're neurodivergent in any way, shape, or form. It is more about cognitive development and where they are cognitively. And for some children, they have to sort out that positioning schema in their mind. And some children, if you find that they are doing it, they've started doing it too much, then it's probably because there's something worrying them. And that is a particular play schema where they find that they can put order. They can put things into order and everything is in its right place. And I've sorted it out and everything's fine. Whereas something might be going on in their world around them or in the classroom that is really upsetting them. But this is created order and some chaos, So it's very helpful, that particular schema. And somebody who's quite famous, who admits to being quite obsessed with positioning and so on, is David Beckham.
Yep.
So he's really into positioning. I suppose it's very good that he is, for when he puts it in the ball and has so many goals.
So you use the word schema a lot. And in my head, I'm literally going, it kind of means patterns and structure. So when we're saying schema within this context, what are we meaning?
Well, to my mind, schemas are like computer programs in your brain. And you access them when you need them. So they may have been memories that you have made. And you've got this, your brain is full of computer programs. And you take one out when you need it. So, for instance, you probably have got a restaurant schema. So whenever you go to a restaurant, you know what's going to happen there. And if the set has changed, you go to that restaurant, and your schema's going to be a bit, I'm not sure about this. And then if the meal is fine, you add that to your restaurant schema, and for that particular restaurant, you know what's going to happen next time you go there. On the other hand, if the chef is awful, you will change your restaurant schema, with reference to that one, that you may not go there again, and you've got to change that computer program about restaurants in your brain. So schemas do basically.
It is. I'm someone into taking it. It's exactly that to me. It's like flow charts. It's processes. I have a cup of tea schema. I know I've got to put the kettle on. I put my tea bag in. I put the sugar in. I wait for it to boil. I stir it for a bit. I take this. That's that process. And so, yeah, in computing we have lots of them, and obviously in the restaurant one there'll be lots of options and things, and you'll be looking for the triggers and understanding it all. But in reality, everything we do is based on these schemas.
That's right. Most definitely so. And that instead of parents and teachers saying, well, what's wrong with this child, who's obsessed by this particular schema, it's more, the question should be, what is this child trying to learn? Why is this child using this schema so much? What are they trying to learn? So it's not about what's wrong with them or, is this child being difficult? It's more about, why are they so interested in this schema? And of course, as Piaget coined the term play schemas in 1923, so it was down to Piaget, but it was part of, as I said before, cognitive development, which is what Piaget was into, obviously.
So again, with the restaurant schema, with my cup of tea schema, there is obviously a reason you start that, and there is an outcome you achieve. So for your restaurant, you're going to eat a meal, and you're also going, was it a good meal? Would I come back here again? And that's going to update the schema. For my cup of tea, I'm going to go through those steps, and what I should end up with is my cup of tea. So, and it's interesting, when you're playing, you're obviously, again, that play scheme is you're trying to learn something. Is it always learning, or is it they're trying to regulate? So i.e. the actual...
Part of it, and it's a really good skill, to be honest. One of the things we want all children to do is to be able to self-regulate. So important. And so if they use that particular schema as to help them self-regulate, they are giving themselves a huge skill for later life. That when something is bothering them, this is their happy place. And
that's a really powerful connection to understand I'm not regulated, but then having that link to this will help me regulate. There are lots of children and lots of adults who don't necessarily recognize when they're dysregulated and know what to do to get themselves regulated.
Yeah.
So as you said, why is he still doing that? Or why is he doing that? Well, obviously something, again, assuming it was for regulation, something has dysregulated your child. And this is helping them regulate. To me, that's a great thing.
That's right. Most definitely so. I mean, we talked about the positioning schema. And, if we think about, there are 9 very popular play schemas. There are many more, but these are the ones that we notice regularly in children. And so if we think of the rotation schema, which was a particular favorite of Seymour Papert, who invented Lego Mindstorms. He was behind Lego Mindstorms. He was fascinated as a 2-year-old by it. And he even writes in one of his books how he would keep turning the circle of a wheel and rotation of that all of the time because it absolutely fascinated him. And to my mind, he's a genius. I mean, he's dead now, unfortunately, but he studied under Piaget in 1958 and went on to obviously be involved in creative play and all the rest of it, and teamed up with Lego. If we think of people who particularly like rotational schemas, let me think. It's the Seymour Papert himself, and it's not a fixation. It's the testing and understanding movement, and it's very scientific, so it's a skill that could end up with them being involved in mathematics and science later on, as Seymour Papert was. But I mean, that's a rotational schema. If we think about the next one, so I said protect. So we've done positioning, rotational. And then if we think of orientation, so that's when they like being upside down, back to front, different points of view. And when they're looking at the world from all these different viewpoints. And it's you often see children doing this. They're upside down. They love going upside down on swings and all this kind of thing. As they get older, this is a skill that's particularly helpful for athletics. And so you find many people who are Olympians who have been fascinated and have used the orientation schema. If you think of Tom Daly, for instance, so Tom Daly, would have to use a rapid reorientation in midair to enter the pool,
Yep.
And so if we go on from that to rethink about transporting schema, and transporting schema is where you'll see little children at the beach, where they can spend all day, to be honest, with a little bucket going down to the water's edge, filling it up, but coming back up, pour it into this so-called moat around this castle that they've made, and they back and forth, or they may be collecting pebbles in it on the beach, or seashells, or so on, and they constantly enjoy transporting things back to front. Back and forth, sorry. And we've had, in the past, in some of my schools, a child has been fascinated with that. And we've had very good caretakers who've allowed them to, in the mornings, help them deliver things to classrooms at the end of the day, take things away from classroom, and sort of use that transportation schema as showing them how it can be used in the real world.
Yep.
So, it's definitely a skill in itself. And somebody who was fascinated by the transportation schema was Steve Jobs, who was one of the founders of Apple. And he had a fascination with and envisaged a futuristic transportation ecosystem. And it's such a shame he died, because I'm sure he would have done something with that, So he was fascinated by the transportation schema. I don't see many children who feel wrapped up in it enough to say that it could become an issue. But for those who do, as I've said, you would give them things to transport back and forth. They could be the one who takes the things up to the office. They could be the one who takes things down to the canteen. You're giving them something practical to do, to use that skill that has lodged in their mind. And it's a schema that they feel they need to overcome and to master. So you're helping them master that schema. You're not seeing it as an issue. You're actually allowing them to find a use for it. And I think that's something that parents and practitioners can do, is think about the schemas and think, well, actually, that little boy who loves positioning thing, and position all of the shoes after we're getting ready for PE, So it's thinking about, he could put out all the ready for that time. They enjoy that so much. It's showing them how that schema can be used in real life, in the real world.
Yep.
And so if we think now, say the next one would be the enclosing schema. Now, this is quite an exciting one because, this is an important schema which leads on to, believe it or not, an understanding of Venn diagram and an ability to organize knowledge. Because the enclosing schema is like, say, for instance, as a small child, you might have a farmyard for them to play with. and organize all the animals into that field, you might have a zoo where you've got different areas of the zoo where particular animals belong. And so the child realizes that there's a belonging and that you wouldn't put, say, cat, tigers, and so on in the same place that you would put, I don't know, penguins. I shouldn't say that because I don't know. But anyway, you wouldn't put them together. And a child, if they put it together, you say, oh, do you think that the tiger might eat? You know, there's a full lovely learning that you can get out of an enclosing scheme, knowing that it leads on to organizing knowledge, such as Venn diagrams. You know, so in that circle, there are cats. In that circle, there are jungle animals. And in the middle, where it intersects, you know, where it
It's
overlap.
It's that understanding. It's identifying the characteristics of those objects. It's going, okay, you've got 4 legs, you've got 4 legs, and you put the cows and horses together and the chickens somewhere else and the ducks somewhere else. And you look at them going, but they are different. That one's got a longer neck. I mean, I know the word for neck. So you separate those out.
Yeah.
Then you get a donkey.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
But again, as you going into the jungle, you start recognizing those characteristics and you have these quite simple rules. Yes, that field or that field, that bucket or that bucket. And yet there's one going, well, it doesn't fit in either. Or it fits in both. And you're going, well, when it fits in both, what do I do? So, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I mean, so Pianti, this was a really important schema, the operational schema. And, you know, when you go from a pre-operational stage where you're talking about, you know, months to 5 years old or something, and then you go to a concrete operational stage, and then you go to the higher level, and you think to yourself, this is what you're doing by them really interested in the enclosing schema, you know? So I'm trying to think now. Oh, soon, like Gaudi. Gaudi was a person fascinated by the enclosure schema. And if you've ever seen any of his buildings, which are fascinating to see, I've seen some of them in Barcelona, he does build kind of like cocoon-like structures. And he said it was all about making people feel comfortable. So some children who don't realize, but they are interested in the enclosure schema, are those children who benefit from having like a tent-like system for bedtime. So they might prefer to, and lots of parents do this, particularly of children who are neurodivergent, but to be honest, this could apply to any child if they're interested in this particular schema, is to allow them to have a kind of tent-like area to sleep in at night time, or even to sleep in the tent with a nice, comfortable mattress for them.
Yeah.
You know? So it's about allowing them to develop and feel comfortable within that schema before they move on. Or they may not move on. Gaudi didn't move on. But he used his interest in it to develop the most amazing architecture, you know?
I think with a lot of these schemas, we can see them not only in our children's play, but also in our adult life.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
And some of the things I'm literally thinking of is actually doing these things can help us, or they do help us regulate.
Yes.
I know, and it might sound sexy when I say this, and I do not mean it to be in any way, but I'm going to say that putting the washing away is you are sorting people's washing out and you're sorting different types of clothes out.
Uh-huh.
But it's almost like when my wife gets home from work, she kind of does the washing. So part of me is that, to me, I'm hearing that, to me, that's that transportation. You're taking the dirty washing, you're putting it in the washing machine. You're taking that washing, You're then hanging it up. You're taking it from there to do there, and then you're sorting it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that doing the washing is regulating, but it's almost like she'll come from work, from teaching, and just kind of doing those processes, doing these transportation, the organisation, the include, doing that is like helping her be going, cool, this is bringing me down.
Yes, that's right.
And a sense of achievement. There are a number of times when you sit at your computer and you spent a whole day at work, but your emails are still getting busier. What have I actually achieved? And you don't see it. Whereas I think when we go into the practical world, the transportation, the positioning, all of that, you can start with a unorganized mess and end up with an organized stuff. And it's easy to see the start and the end.
Yes, yes. And that's why it's so important to allow children to go through these schemas and experience them. And if they need to spend longer, and a child, for instance, who's got complex learning needs, would maybe spend far longer on a particular schema than somebody might think is necessary. But it probably is necessary for them, you know? And so if we go on to say the connecting schema, so if we remember PROPEC, we're on now, connecting. That's all about linking things together and attaching things, and the train track, like the boy I said about earlier, who did it all around the classroom, and obviously Lego as well. And these are early engineering skills, which is really important. And if we think of somebody who's still obsessed with the connecting schema at the moment, and I think he's about 80, to be honest, and that's Rod Stewart. And so in several of his homes that he has got a particular room dedicated to railways. And so he constantly builds new railway sets and has, massive rooms full of them. So he's fascinated still by the connecting schema, and he still needs that. As you so rightly said, self-regulating. His self-regulating is his railway train. Somebody who's interested in Lego a lot is Sarah Williams and Ed Sheeran. And Ed Sheeran's even written a song, hasn't he, Lego House. And they both worked with Lego at different times. I mean, in the same way, really, I suppose, as Seymour Papert did all those years ago. But theirs is coming at it from a different way where they're enjoying it. I remember when I introduced Lego therapy into our school a number of years ago. And I had first researched it, and I tend to do that, I would research something, spending my summer holidays on that research. And I'd researched about Lego therapy, and after I'd done a bit of research, I went to school and said to the staff, we're not going to bring it in, unfortunately, because I don't think this is technical, that you would stop yourselves from helping the children. So I said, I'm afraid I'm not bringing it in. Do you know what? I was told that the lesson a few months later, I think, rather than weeks, I was at church, and the minister had decided to introduce social Lego as a way of taking the church forward. And so we all had to play with this Lego to make plans for some new build and so on within the church. And then I went to church, and the minister introduced a surprise session that we were going to have social Lego. And that was we were planning the future of the church, and we used social Lego to do it. And it was a fantastic experience. And I felt so ashamed of my decision for school that I went immediately from church to Toys R Us, which was around then, and picked up loads of construction sets, Lego construction sets. So, they were serious pieces of Lego because I had a training day the next day. And I'd already planned the training day. We already knew what was happening, but I could change the introduction, which I did. And all of the staff, while they were going off into their different groups, could come back to their particular Lego construction to get on with it. Do you know what? It was one of the best training days, they told me, that they've ever had. They loved it, absolutely loved it. And we brought in Lego therapy to school. And you know what? It was one of the best things that we brought into the school, and we introduced over 25 different therapies. But Lego therapy was the one that was asked for the most by other schools, particularly mainstream schools, who wanted to introduce it into their school. And when you think of a long, long time ago, when on a Friday afternoon, and it would be play basically for children in classes, and some children would get a box of Lego, throw it on the floor and play with it. This is not Lego therapy, obviously. It's entirely different, and that's another session to talk about Lego therapy, to be honest. But we introduced it, and it was very, very successful. And then if we think about, so we've done PRO, T-E-C, and we're now on T, transforming. And so transforming is when you're mixing, dissolving, reshaping, gardening, cooking. So it's cooking, it's chemistry, it's gardening, it's all those kind of things that a lot of famous people enjoy. Heston Blumenthal absolutely loved transforming, using many chemicals actually, with his cooking. And then you think of, I'm trying to think of his name now, Alan, somebody who does the gardening.
Titchmarsh.
Titchmarsh, that's it. Fascinated by transforming. At least he's done that a lot, hasn't he, with transforming gardens. He goes into somebody's garden and transforms it, And so he's made that his life's work. Heston Blumenthal enjoys doing that as part of his life skill. And so dissolving, I'm sure there's many chemists and so on, Marie Curie and all the rest of it, who have done these amazing inventions. So of this transforming play schema of having mud kitchens in your classroom and all these kind of things could produce the next Nobel Prize winner, the next TV personality, the best chef in the world. Who knows, if you allow them to do the transforming.
And it's interesting on that, because obviously when you start in that area, you have no idea what's going to come out. If you add this and this, you've got no idea.
Exactly. Making cakes is like that, isn't it?
But or with the making cake, you're kind of going, that's what you're going to get. Whereas I think when you're in that mud kitchen, you are literally putting just random things together and you're learning. Yeah. You're not sitting there going, oh, I'm going to make a cake today. You're literally going, I'm going to throw this in. What happens if I do this? What happens if I mix colours? Oh, everything goes brown and you mix lots of colours.
Yeah.
But then over time, you in that schema, you're building up. If I mix this and this, it will do this. When if I do this and this, it will do this. And then that cake is you going, right. So apparently if I do this, I'll end up with a cake. And you do that. And then you've got those people who just go, I'm going to change this recipe.
Yeah.
And they then change it and make it their own. And they understand that actually if you add a bit of this, you need to add a bit of this, because making a cake is chemistry. And that's a fascinating thing, that you go from the I have no idea what's going to come out to Heston Blumenthal mixing some really random stuff together, hoping for an outcome. So he's kind of got an idea of what he wants to achieve and he's going to do all that, mix it together. That'll be an interesting thing. And he's creating things. He's using that schema to achieve things rather than just, as we start out at, just purely exploring on what will happen.
Yeah. And it just shows you the importance of play schemas and why it's shouldn't have been lost from the curriculum, you know? If we think now then of the next one, which is enveloping, and so that's wrapping, hiding, making den, covering. Temple Grandin is a fan of that. She likes pressure, desperately likes pressure, you know, around her. And then you've got environmental artists, Christo and Jean-Claude, who make large scale works of art and they cover it all in fabric. To some people, that isn't art. And yet, to many people, it is, and certainly to them it is. But if we look at that enveloping and wrapping and hiding and covering and building tent as a more kind of important schema for children to actually go through, you know? And maybe, and you know, this is where you get some children needing the weighted blankets and so on, you know, because that enveloping schema is so important to them for their self-regulation, you know.
Yeah.
And then the last one we'll look at in this play schemas is trajectory. I would say this is one of the ones that schools, particularly schools of children with challenging behavior, find difficult. Throwing a chair comes to mind. You know, you could have a classroom, went through and chair. Now, what we discovered is if we allowed our children, who are very physical in that way, to go outside and row, aim for the net and have a ball to practice basketball and so on out in the playground. You know, it'll relieve a lot of that schema that they obviously needed. It was important for their makeup. It was something that, you know, throwing a chair in frustration needs to be repurposed so that you have a way that they know I need to self-regulate. This is where I'm going to go. And I'm going off to play basketball in the yard for a bit. Is that okay? And off goes a TA with them to make sure they're safe and so on. Now, if we look at it, it's an urge to throw, to drop, to watch movement, an exploration, which is quite exciting, of gravity, distance, speed, control, and giving them safe outdoor opportunities. It's a very powerful schema. Tiger Woods is known for his trajectory control, and it's a key aspect of his game. So again, lots of sports people are interested by trajectory. And so it's very important to allow these children who want to be physically active, really, to give them plenty of opportunities to be involved in sport and you know, physical opportunities so that they can calm themselves by using that schema. And, you know, we had a soft playroom. So sometimes some of our children would take themselves up to there because they knew that they needed to throw themselves about. They needed to throw the huge balls, physio balls and so on that we had in there. They needed that kind of way to self-regulate. So those are the play schemas that most people are aware of. In the book that I've written, the neurodiversity, early years neurodiversity toolkit, you will find in there lesson plans and ideas backed up by the B-squared assessment, actually, for teachers to actually use and adapt for each of the different play schemas. And I've also written this venture into play, adapted skills profile. And in here, I added to it the schematic play dimension. And so it's a way, it's quite a simple way. This is free on my website, actually. And it's quite a simple way for teachers to observe the different play schemas and to see where a child is in them. So it's a very simple and easy way for teachers to do that. And like I say, that's free on my website. So I would say, as Piaget says, that schemas are there to help you work things out, and they're a sign of a developing brain. They are not something to stress about. They're not something for parents to start panicking and worrying about, oh gosh, my child may have a problem. No, they haven't got a problem. They are working things out. It's a sign that their brain is developing. It's not stagnant. And it's a sign that they are learning how to self-regulate. Please don't stop them from doing that.
No. And one of the things I was thinking about as you've been talking through this, I've obviously mentioned like that washing, and I know that sometimes I know it's weird. I can't do something, blah, blah, blah. Then I see a load of stuff which needs to be taken to the shed or something. And I spend literally 20 minutes just walking things up and down to the shed. And I find that regulating, but that's that transportation schema.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, as you were talking about all those different schemas, I was reflecting on my own adult life, on things, actually, that's what I do there, or I've done that, or I look at my childhood. But also one of the things that struck me is sensory circuits.
Oh, yes, yeah.
The sensory circuits are touching on these schemas.
Yes, they are.
So although we're saying it kind of lots of time, we don't, their play isn't there, actually your movement breaks. Your sensory circuits are using these schemas, and you start off with those more active ones, probably that trajectory one and things like that, and you end up back down to probably that first one, that positioning. When you're organising this, and it's like literally going, so it is there in our schools, it is happening. And even football, as you said, is that trajectory, running around and things like that. But anything to do with the ball at playtime is that trajectory. And there are those kids who really need it. So although when we think of play, we're literally thinking like in the classroom and things like that, actually that sensory circuits, all those sorts of things are these.
Yes. And I think that's a great thing that you've just said, because you've made me think about the fact that a lot of teachers are providing these schemas already for children, but they just need to think in their head, actually, we've done the trajectory schema to death today with all the sports that we've been involved in. Let's have a look at one of these other schemas. Perhaps the children need to develop this because this is going to help the development of their brain in a different way.
Yeah.
So it's although some children, particularly with complex needs and PMLD, may need to go over a particular schema again and again and again, building neural pathways, that they need in their brain. Creating this schema in their brain may take a lot more practice for some children, but for others, there is sometimes a need for teachers to be aware of the schemas and to be able to think to themselves, now, those 9, have we covered them at all this term? Have we ensured that those who would benefit and may end up being somebody very important for the world in conservation or whatever, through the schema that they're really interested in, have we allowed them the chance to practice that?
Definitely. There is that exploring it to learn and exploring it to regulate. And it kind of offers both.
Yes.
And it can further learn. It can do so much more. And there are people who obviously do that. They play in the written world or they play in the science. But it often comes from being able to do it in the physical world. It often comes from doing that really simple type of play and changing things and learning what you can change and what you can't change. That is that creativity that we kind of look for, is what are the limits? What can I do? What can't I do? And having the opportunity to express yourself that way with those things, that actually a child might have organized the farm animals by horses, cows, sheep, actually might have organized them by what food they like, or the number of legs, or the number of colors, or simply size. And is that wrong? No, it's different. But seeing things from different ways, and when you see maybe a child do that in that play-based way, you're seeing them organize things to you in a way that you're going, why are they doing that? That might be kind of demonstrating the way they think and why they may be doing other things differently. So it's giving you a kind of that view into their world, the way they think, the way they organize and plan things.
Yes, and creative learning is obviously taps into play quite a bit. There was a time in America where that was quite a big thing. I'm trying to think of the name they gave it, but not on me at the moment. But it was all about creativity. And it was a huge thing over in America. But again, it was allowing people the opportunity to play and learn, you know.
And I'm just going to bring it back right at the beginning. You talked about this play-based and the limits of how we need to, how assessment is done and things like that. And I'm just going to bring it down to that is kind of that challenge that, yes, in schools, we have to do this written way, we have to do all of this. And that basically what we're doing in that secondary schools, especially, we are making people conform.
Yeah.
We are giving them, this is how you answer. We're not creating those curious, creative minds that actually the world of STEM and arts need. We're creating people who follow the rules and without question. They're not questioning, why don't we mix that and that? Because this will happen.
Yes.
They're just told, this is what you do. And I think that play-based approach, using all those areas, we need to do more of. And I do hope with the curriculum changes, which we announce next year in 2027, that actually there is space for that lower down the schools. In the same way there's that oracy and critical thinking is actually exploration of ideas.
And I think in a way that as the curriculum was developed, it would have been, a lot of it would have been based on Piaget's, some of the things that he spoke about and wrote about and so on. So I'm sure a lot of it would have been based on his theories and so on. But I think from my own point of view, the time of COVID gave schools a huge opportunity to rethink the curriculum. And yes, we will be having a new curriculum, but I wonder how far they've gone in going back to the roots of Piaget's thinking and of how, the curriculum can be developed to allow for a more play approach. Because we're losing children, particularly in the secondary age, from schools quite a bit. I know of quite a few school refusers who find that the structure of school and the way that it's arranged nowadays doesn't meet their need. And when you think of this new modern world with the huge amount of technology and so on, there must be a way of devising something more suitable that meets children's needs. But as well as that, I think there needs to be, and perhaps this is happening already, that trainee teachers and so on are being given the skill to find out how to use these schemas and so on in the way that they teach. So sometimes you can make learning far more fun than it is.
Yep, definitely. And I think that's a great way to end it on that line. You can make learning more fun than it is. Really enjoyed the conversation. Lots of things I kind of reflecting on. I did one of those episodes where I listened a lot and was thinking lots. Some episodes I'm diving in and joining in, but there was a lot of reflection. The things you go through, it was like, yeah, I remember doing that. And those things I do in adult life, which again, we think of play as young, child, early years. But actually with the skills we do as adults, the things we do to regulate as adults, how much of it are these same skills, these same schemas that we've been doing since childhood? And it's that familiarity, it's that expectations, that certainty of if I do this, this will happen, and all those sorts of things, that is what keeps us in them.
Yes, and it's a new way of looking at Piaget, really.
Yes.
You know, about what he really meant. You know, we're not just learning all these texts and so on. We're actually finding out what he meant.
Definitely. And you've mentioned your book. So as always, I will be sharing my guest contact details, so you find out how to follow Ange and get in contact with Ange. And also, this isn't your only book; it's just your latest book.
Yes, and the nice thing about this one is there is a lot of B squared reference in.
Yay!
So yeah.
So for those who use B squared assessment, it's going to be great for you. For those who don't, you need to find out more about B squared assessment. So thank you for listening to the show. If you haven't subscribed already, click on that subscribe button. And don't forget to follow us on social media, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and so on. And the SENDcast is powered by B squared. And our assessment software connecting steps helps settings to show progress for a wide range of pupils. And one of our frameworks is early steps. And early steps, as the name suggests, is for early years and is based on the development matters. But we've made a number of changes to support settings to show progress for pupils with SEND in early years, including splitting that giant birth to 3 years level into small levels so we can show those small steps of progress for children working at that developmental level. And as always, in the show notes, you'll find a link to the B Square website and a link to book a meeting with me so I can take you through the early steps framework and answer any questions you may have. So thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the SENDcast. It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.